if anybody follows the Bassmaster and the qualifier, how they get their points and they calculate the points, I was reading an interesting article about a couple of anglers this week who are known for essentially, quote unquote, swinging for the fences at every tournament. They don't like to fish for points, and in essence, and in all calculations, you need to fish for points if you want to be and make that classic at the end of the year. I asked Scotty on the last show how many boats he thought would be in the Bassmaster Classic.
Right,
and
that was one of the questions.
It was one of the questions. So Scotty had a pretty good guess. I think he said like 50 boats.
I said 50, yeah.
50 boats. And in fact, this year there's 52 boats in that Classic. And just think about that. Of all the anglers that were eligible or possible to participate in this one tournament, only 52 get to make that appearance. And tonight, we're fortunate to be able to speak with one of them. And not only are we speaking with one of them, we're speaking with one of them that's been there before. So what we'd like to find out about with Pete, what I'm very anxious to talk to him about, is just what goes through the mind of a guy getting ready to fish for what is essentially the holy grail of bass fishing in North America. I mean, there's no better opportunity. There's no better. Maybe you want to try a cell, Scotty.
Well, no, I'm on hold at the.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. I'm on hold at the hotel.
Oh, you're on hold at the hotel. Okay, so Scotty's trying to get actually through to Pete's room at the hotel. Pete's in Raleigh right now at the boat show, and he's taken time off or away from the boat show to actually talk with us tonight. The Classic this year will be taking place on February 22nd to the 24th. It'll be on Grand Lake, Oklahoma. And contrary to last year, Grand Lake is a very clear water lake that is loaded with docks. All right. So if anybody watched the Classic last year, you saw where they were fishing. It was a very shallow conditions with a lot of cover. This year, they're throwing a curveball at them. Grand Lake is a very clear water, loaded with dock type of place, and much different than the shallow and thick covered water that they had fished in last year's Classic. When asked how he was going to prepare for this year's Classic, last year's champion Bobby Lane said, and I quote, "I'm going in with a game plan and I'll stick with it on day one and see how things end up in the first weigh-in. To be honest, having won the Classic, I don't have to put the same pressure on myself to win, and I can go in with a little more confidence." So that being said, and working on the words of last year's champion, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to welcome Mr. Pete Gluszek to the show. Pete, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys having me on the show. I'm down here in Raleigh, North Carolina, talking bass fishing all day, and I'm really looking forward to doing some more with you guys right now.
Well, now that's great. What's the weather like down there right now in Raleigh, Pete?
Man, it's unbelievable. It's like it's summertime down here. It's going to be 70 degrees and sunny tomorrow. I'd be surprised if we get any customers tomorrow. I think they're all going to be out on the lake.
Damn. Wow. I'm coming. We're going to finish this interview. We're on our way to Raleigh.
Yeah, we'll pack up the truck and the boat, and we're on our way.
That's it. We're going fishing tomorrow, Pete.
That sounds good to me. I like talking about fishing, but I like fishing better. So
yeah.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, I hear you there.
There you go, Pete. We were talking about. I gave everybody essentially a bio of your background, and it's very impressive to say the least. Especially the fact that you've had 13 top 10 finishes, 20 top 20s, and 40 top 50s, and how today. Becoming or being eligible for the Classic end of the year has so much emphasis on being consistent in your finishes and collecting those points to be able to make the Classic. What I wanted to know from you, and the fact that this is not your first Classic coming in this year, how do you manage the nerves? How are you dealing with the pressure? There's 52 boats that are going to fish for the biggest trophy, the biggest award in competitive
bass fishing
in the world. How do you deal with that and stay focused on what's ahead of you?
Not to add any pressure with that question. Right?
No.
Well, I wasn't nervous at all until you just said that. Jeez, now I'm all shaking. Honestly, I've been to the FLW Championship. I've been to the Classic a couple times, and I gotta say, the first couple times I was at the Classic, I was like, I must have had that deer in the headlights kind of frozen look, because it was very, very intimidating. Getting there's your heroes out there, that you're competing against for the championship. Not to mention you're going into a stadium with 20,000 people that are there to watch the show. I mean, it was intimidating, and it's still going to be a very magical, big time experience. But I think after being at this for so long, I'm kind of through that. Where that kind of set me back on my heels. I kind of try to draw from the energy, and the excitement of the event.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm ready. I mean, I've won tournaments, on both the FLW and Bass sides, and I've had some real big finishes. I've been on camera before. I've had fleet of boats following me around on the tournament. So I've seen all that stuff, and I'm ready for a W on the highest level. I'm ready for it. So I can't wait. I think I'm more excited for this Classic than I've been for anything that I've done so far in my career.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, Pete, and it's great to see that you're turning the nerves into a positive energy, and it gets you going.
Well, I think if by doing that, it'll give you a great advantage going in there, and give you the confidence that you can do it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Well, and I think that's important. You got to have that confidence. I mean, in all honesty, there's probably a few guys that are a little bit nervous or going to have some nerves. Everybody's going to be a little bit nervous going in here, but man, these are 50 of the best. These guys all know how to win, and that's the thing. You got to know how to win. I noticed in my career, it took me a few years to get my first win, and then once you get one, you're much more likely to get another one, and you realize how you are able to get into the winner's circle. And that's very, very important as a competitor, because so often we're watching Kevin or Rick Klon or Denny Brower or Ike and Ellie. We're watching how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they do it. You have to find out your strengths. You have to find out how you are able to get into that winner's circle. What are the things that you need to do to find your zone?
Right.
And I think that's after 15 years, I've finally, I think, come into my zone. I know how to find it. Not that I can hit it every time, but I recognize it when it's there, and I know how to get myself there. And so I think it's a good time for me to take a shot at winning this one. I'm sure going to be trying to do that. I can promise you that.
Well, I can tell you now, up here in the north, and since we started publicizing the fact that you were going to be a guest on the show, Pete, I can tell you now, there are a million Pete Gluszek fans north of the border that I was not even aware of, that have keep telling me, this is the best guest one of the best guests you've had on. We've had Ken Golub, we've had Guido Hibden, so you're amongst some pretty big anglers, and they're going to be cheering you on. It's great to hear your emphasis on how the confidence level is so important, that you really need to believe and have confidence in your ability to track down, locate these fish, and like you said, when you identify them, be able to put them in the boat. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It doesn't mean you have to be cocky. Cocky and confident, in my books, are two different things. You just have to be well aware of your capabilities and your ability, your confidence in your ability to be able to break it down and like you said, bring home that W. And I think, like you said, the more you do it and the more it happens, the more comfortable you get when you get into these situations and you're fishing for such a prestigious event. When we're going, and I mentioned earlier here, Pete, that we're going into Grand Lake. Grand Lake is a very clear body of water with a lot of dock territory. Versus last year, they were fishing a very shallow body of water that had a lot of thick cover. What do you know about this body of water before we move into it for the Classic?
Well, I don't know much at all, but I love that. This is a new body of water for me, and we have an off-limits period that started on December 10th, and I was able to get out to Grand for 6 days on the water, and I spent most of my time was spent just on the sonar, looking at side imaging, and driving around the lake, looking at the different watercolors and the different parts of the lake. But one of the things you said that's very true and is also maybe a little, I want to expand on it. It is a clear water lake in parts.
Okay.
There are creeks that are very clear, and down towards the lower end of the lake are very clear. But as you move upriver, there's a tremendous amount of stain to the water. A lot of muddy water, a lot of stained water, and so that part I love. I love that contrast where you can fish clear water, you can fish stained water. You have a lot of options. So I learned that about this body of water. My research has told me that this is going to fish shallow. No matter what time of year we go, no matter what the water temperature is,
wow.
We're going to be fishing in that 10 to 15 foot or less.
Wow.
And that surprised me too. And what else surprised me is it fishes extremely well in cold water. And I just based that on tournament results that I was able to find. And in January and February, it's not uncommon to see 30-pound 5-bass stringers.
Wow.
In the heart of winter. So that's impressive. A lot of docks, a lot of rocks. You're going to hear this a lot. Transition banks, where the banks transition from bluff walls to boulders to pea gravel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be a big thing that the fish key on this time of year. Docks, brush piles. All the docks down there are floating docks,
mm-hmm.
Which is unique. A lot of the docks that we fish up north, even in Canada, are those metal ones that roll out, or they're actually wooden posts.
Yeah.
So these are all floaters.
Wow.
So, but that's the kind of habitat. I can tell you this: there's more bait on Grand Lake than any lake I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
It's crazy full of bait. I mean, from one side of the lake to the other, your sonar is just blacked out with bait. There's pelicans that migrate up from the Gulf to feed on it. And, so that explains why it's such a great fishery. So those are just some of the things I learned out there at my practice. But, I saved most of my fishing for the official practice. I really haven't hardly wet a line out there yet.
Well, that's interesting that you brought up the way you approached those 6 days and the fact that you barely wetted a line when you were out there, Pete. And you did basically a lot of studying of the layout of the lake, and as you said, the watercolors and the temperatures and the different structures and the bottom structures, and you started to draw from there, because we've had previous shows where we discussed how do you approach a new body of water and how do you break it down, and basically you've just echoed what we've been saying for quite a while, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to wet a line before you start to learn a lot about what you're going in to fish. The thing that amazes me about your description is you've essentially described a northern Canadian body of water. Here, we're one of the famous bodies of water where we fish a lot of smallmouth. In the fall, when the water temperatures drop off significantly into the low 40s and low 50s and high 40s, then we start to see bags, and we've seen bags of 30-pound plus smallmouth bass, and that's when the fishing really turns on.
And typically we're fishing those bodies of water shallow also.
Correct. We're fishing them in 8, 10, 12, 15 feet. So it sounds very, very similar, and that water is also gin clear most of the time. It sounds very similar to the bodies of water we fish here. It's amazing.
It is amazing. I wish there were 6-pound smallmouth in this lake. I would really enjoy that. I love fishing for smallmouth. I am a smallmouth nut. I know some people may know that are listening to this, but I got to be honest. I love fishing up in the northern part of the States and Canada. I fish on Ontario. I fish the St. Lawrence, up on Erie. I'm always going over to the Canadian side. I haven't gone too deep into Canada to fish the lakes, but I fished all over this country. My absolute favorite places to fish are the ones that are bordering Canada and inside Canada. Those places that have those great big smallmouth, and then you can turn around and go to the bank and catch giant largemouth.
Yeah. Well, we get great mixed bags.
Yeah, we do get a really good mixed bag. We have to have you up here one day to come up and fish, Pete, and
see some of these Canadian smallmouth bass.
Well, you see the Canadian smallmouth bass, and we'll also see if Steve Bogley can actually catch fish.
Yeah, we'll try and get Steve up here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Steve can catch fish. We're going to find out.
Well, we'll find out.
I've already caught a fish before.
I did too. I forget when, but he did catch one. So it was back there.
There's going to be some feedback on this.
I think
we're going to hear about that.
No, for sure.
So listen, Pete, this is not your first classic, and how do you think you're going to approach this? Are you going to approach it any differently than you have your previous classics?
I got to think so for sure. I mean, the first 2 classics I fished, I was just, I was a babe in the woods. I was just getting started in this game. and I really didn't know what my strengths were, or I hadn't won yet, and so it was I was really kind of green and kind of a rookie, so I'm much more relaxed now, and I understand, I